Um, why do you support a Banderist-leaning government in Ukraine when Bandera was an ally of Adolf Hitler and the Ukrainian ultranationalists that he led participated in the slaughter of Jews and Poles and Russians? Never again doesn't mean never again, does it? Because it's happening now, and yet you're allowing it to happen. You're Germans who owe the world. You owe the world the duty of making sure it never happens again. And yet it's happening again because of you. Olaf Scholz hasn't learned anything. When Olaf Scholz and the German government refuses to allow Russians to participate in the ceremonies of the liberation of the marking the liberation of the Nazi death camps, the concentration camps, it means you've learned nothing. I just ask all Germans to go to Berlin, go to the parliament, go to the Reichstag, the former Reichstag, now it's the Bundestag, and go out and look at Tiergarten and look at the plinths that are set up there and tell me what kind of tank is on that plinth. Is it an American M4 Sherman? Is it a Crusader from the British? No, it's a Soviet T-34-85. Those are the tanks that the Soviet Union used to defeat Nazi Germany, to capture Berlin, to destroy the odious ideology of Adolf Hitler. Those tanks are there for a reason, because your city was taken by the Russians. You haven't learned anything if today you have the gall to stand up and criticize Russia for taking down the progeny of Nazi Germany, which of course is what Ukraine is. And you know it. You know it, Germany. You know it. You have the damn gravesite of Bandera on your soil. On your soil. Dig his body up, cut it into 1,000,000 pieces, and scatter it around the world. Nobody should be ever allowed to visit that site. His is not a memory that should be allowed to exist. Eliminate him from the world. But you let it happen. You let people come. You let the Ukrainian ambassador come and speak kindly of Bandera, the ambassador to Germany. What are you, Germany? I don't mean to be cruel, but I'm going to say it. Scratch a German, you get a Nazi. And if I go to Germany today and scratch you, I'll get the same blood that bled in the soil of Russia. I'm pissed at you, Germany. You want to know why? Because on this day, my wife cried. You want to know why I cried? Because her father's cousin, 18 years of age, died fighting Nazi Germany in Poland, and his body is buried in an unmarked grave. Other relatives are buried in other places in Ukraine, where the Ukrainians are toppling the memorials to the sacrifice they made. My relatives on my wife's side. We lost people in Berlin. And you're sitting here pretending it didn't happen. Germany can go to hell, frankly speaking, because they are no better than the people that walked the face of the earth 80 years ago. Wearing the swastika. You haven't learned anything, Germany. You haven't learned a damn thing. You should never be a nation talking about militarization. You don't deserve to have an army. You are lucky to be around today. The Morgenthau Plan should have been implemented based upon what you're doing today. There was a hesitancy on the part of the Soviet Union to allow Germany to reunify because they said too many things are left unresolved. We haven't really thought through this piece. What happens when you bring the two pieces back together? Because Russia knew, the Soviet Union knew, they have 27 million dead because of a unified Germany. Do you really want to bring them back together again without first deciding how this is going to happen? What are the rules of the game? Can we trust them to have a viable economy linked to a viable industry that's linked to Germany's active participation in a military alliance that claims to be defensive in nature, but within 1 year of the collapse of the Soviet Union, violated its pledge not to move 1 inch eastward. And Germany is part and parcel of this. Germany should have said no. Germany should never allow the expansion of NATO. Germany should have stood up in Brussels and said 1 inch eastward means exactly that, and we will not tolerate it because we have done this before. We marched on the East. We committed genocide. We committed war crimes, and we remember this, and we will never allow it to happen again. But Germany is allowing it to happen again because they have learned nothing. They have learned nothing. So I grew up in Germany. I have to tell you, I mean, I loved it. The German people were nice people. I grew up in the 70s. What does that mean, growing up in the 70s? That means that the people that were 50 and 60 years old, I'm 62 today. So there were people there who were still healthy and viable. That meant they served in Nazi army. That means they grew up in Nazi times. And I was looking at them saying, what nice people. But at one time, they had an armband on their shoulders, and they stood in a parade in Nuremberg or elsewhere with their arms in the air shouting, Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil.